What's going on, guys? Belair here. Back. First video after the Birmingham major closed. Got a little sick, which you hate to see. We were really on a roll there with videos, but we're back with 4 big lessons from the Birmingham major. And just for a little background, a little something in the background for you guys to watch. How about a little Drolly action as they are going to run over Furia here? Game two, they're going to stomp on them. Drolly point of view, our clear MVP, and that's actually my first big lesson. I don't know if anybody else has had this thought just yet. I think this might be a Belair original, but Karmine Corp are awesome, and 23-1 series score on the split. That's 96% winning percentage in the strongest region in the world in Europe. And to go even further, not only have they dominated their series in a spectacular fashion, but also their game win. They're 80-21 on their game score, series score. I don't know how you say that, how you articulate that properly, but yeah, 80 wins, 21 game losses. That is 79% win rate on games, which is just unbelievable. They have been so good. Drawley, the clear MVP. I think the thing that sets him aside from everyone else is just this unbelievable one of one wizardry that he can pull off while he is on the ball. There is nobody else who can melt defensive structures at the same pace with the same consistency that he does. And it's not just one thing. He can break you down in a ton of different ways with every mechanic in the book. And I'm sure that we'll stop and just have our jaws drop in awe a couple of times over the course of this video with our MVP playing in the background here as he's going to bait away just an easy one there from Furia, and that actually ends their offensive attack. Here he is putting some pressure on, and that is really a Yan loss. In the corner there, he had a couple of those moments over the course of this tournament where he would just have a miss input, a back flip when he doesn't intend to, a side flip instead of going onto the ball. Yan, not the best tournament in the entire world, but look at this. Drolly starts off sideways, takes this to the ceiling, still gets a touchdown for Atau, gets the bump on Yan. It's just unbelievable what Drolly can do with so much consistency. And I think I'm ready. I've been waiting over the whole, piece of split one here and been like, everybody moved on to Drolly so fast, but is he really the best player in the world when Zen is still out there? We haven't got to see both of them on land just yet. I'm ready, and I don't think that it's not something that Zen can pull back into his grasp. He led the event in shots. He led the event in demos inflicted. He led the whole event in score, and that's an imperfect metric, but it does kind of show how all over the place he was. So Vitality back to the drawing board here, but don't worry, we're going to talk about them in a little bit. I also want to talk about the rest of the Karmine Corp players and just how incredible they were over the course of this entire split. Birmingham, of course, included a rightful and deserved win here. Atau, so impressed by what he was able to do. Last season with Karmine Corp, he was asked to do a lot. He was their lead scorer, he was their lead shooter, and now that you have Drolly, you don't really need him to do as much offensively, at least, in a way in which is required. Atau can do all of his Atau things, get super mechy behind the ball, go for midair fakes, super physical, demo plays, cut stuff out with his ceiling challenges and things like that. But it's not something that they need him to do, or else there's not really a great secondary alternative. As an off-ball player, as a second scoring option, it's just paradise for Atau. It's exactly where he can shine the brightest. And he did a ton of great stuff over the course of this event. Very interesting. Not only was he striking in big moments when they needed him, which has also always been something with Atau where it's like, oh, when the lights are bright, can he shine up? I've talked several times about the fact that they had lost to G2 in the World Championship to get eliminated last year, and Atau had a couple huge whiffs in that Game 7. Atau led all players in this event with overtime goals scored. I think he had 6, if I recall correctly. Or no, he had 5, and Karmine Corp had 6 total. Is the accurate stat. But Atau, despite everything he was doing, only 50% goal participation, which was one of the lowest of the entire event. So it's like, hey, Atau, you just kind of do your thing and pick your spots, and everything you do is just additive. We don't necessarily need you to be popping off or shooting a ton. Drali can do that for you. And I'll talk briefly about Vatira here. We still got 3 other points to get to, and I've just gushed for the entirety of this about this Karmine Corp team, and they were that good. They deserve it. But Vatira's leadership, there's a couple big moments where you kind of need him to show up here, and Atau, with the ego not even going to go off the kickoff. Let's look at our scoreboard, and we'll actually circle back to Atau, or Vatira, excuse me, in the next game. But look at Drali filling it up. 2-2, 3 on 4 shots. Not a single 0 across the board for Karmine Corp, as they are going to punch Furia in the mouth and force them to take a timeout here. Let's actually hop over to Karmine Corp taking down the Ultimates and see if we can finish out the rest of these big lessons that we took from Birmingham. All right, game 4 against the Ultimates. Championship point. Win this, you lift the trophy. And it looks like we got a little visual bug here on Drali that just fixed itself. Clean sweeps from Karmine Corp to win this out against Furia, and Ultimates beat them both 4-0. We're talking for a second at the end of that last game about Vatira's leadership. And look, he hit big shots when you need him to hit big shots. Led this team in assists as well. Just the perfect third man. Life has never been easier for Vatira to do what he is doing. He is not, everything that he does, this is, again, all like Drali is so additive. But anything that Atau and Vatira do, not anything that's reductive. But a lot of what they do is made easier and less necessary by what Drali can do on the ball. And they all help each other in big ways to achieve what they do. I've put out some tweets recently about some statistical takeaways from the event. If you want a little more information, I would go recommend checking out my Twitter, and there might be a little info about our players there. As here's that wizardry we were talking about by Drali, and I promise we'll eventually not talk about Karmine Corp. Guys, did you know that they're good? Chronic's just going to give this one over after the fake there, and then just a clean beat over LJ in the corner is going to put Casey on the board here. Speaking of Ultimates, my second big lesson was identity is so important. This Ultimates team, we talked about all the doubts we had about them coming in, and them finding their flow as the best counterattacking team that the RLCS had to offer at this event. Karmine Corp was just the best at everything, but Ultimates as this counter-attacking demon, what they were able to do against Falcons, what they did against Vitality, what they were able to do finally against NRG in a battle as old as time in North America with all of the names on the sheet there. It was really impressive to see that Ultimates were able to rise above my expectations for them by finding that counterattacking identity. Same goes for NRG. They've been doing this for a while. This was their least impressive offensive version of this, but these limited series where, you know, a lot of 1-0 wins, 2-1 wins. They're keeping it really tight against these teams, forcing them into tough moments, and just allowing their mechanics in the midfield and their stability on the defensive back line to kind of be the foundation of what they're trying to do. Falcons as this possession-heavy, high line team. It, of course, bit them in the butt about 30 times over the course of this event, getting beat on counterattacks as they keep that high line, especially against Ultimates, but that's what Falcons are looking to do. Karmine Corp, a ton of speed and pressure. Even a team like Dignitas, where it's like the comms are going to be perfect. They're going to be low-scoring affairs similar to an NRG or a Complexity, and we're going to get a lot of mid-air fakes, especially from Stizzy, to kind of open some stuff up for us. Teams that don't really have an identity Wild card, despite that team being together for so long, Banana Head really struggled over the course of this event. Torsos was actually carrying the torch for them offensively in a way that I don't think is productive for them to win, as Drali is going to get a diving save across his own net there. Team Secret, what are they? What are they trying to kind of put together here? That's a question that KV1 and Mata teams have asked for a while. The addition of Swift didn't make that much clearer. And even a team like Vitality, who, they kind of know what they are in the sense of like they're going to take a ton of shots, pretty heliocentric around Zen getting up so many of those shots. He's going to get a ton of demos like we talked about. But that transitions us into our third point here, which is momentum. Vitality, they go up 2-0 against Ultimates, who take a timeout, end up coming back and beating them in 4 straight. They go up 2-0 on Furia as well. Furia end up bringing that back. They win it in 7 in overtime, so it's kind of like, all right, well, is there really a lesson there outside of it being a super close series? But even teams like Wildcard, who play Karmine Corp super close, you want to talk about momentum, oh my goodness. This is the best start that Wildcard have had in such a long time. Maybe this finally is the time that they break into that top 8. They played Karmine Corp so close, and then they turn around and it takes them 5, and it's so close for them to beat Foot. And it's like, okay, which version are we going to get? Because they've now played the 1 and the 16 tight. And after that close one against Foot, they get absolutely blasted by GK, who put up about 400 goals on them. And then they end up losing to Luminosity. And Luminosity's on the opposite side of that, right? And I've talked past this game as well, so let's throw on another one, and we'll wrap up this video. Diving back a little earlier to the tournament, we are on Lost Point of View against Twisted Minds. This was a matchup that had me so excited with these two high-powered offenses going up against one another, and I was impressed by players on both sides. But before we talk about a couple of those players, let's wrap up what we were talking about. With the momentum piece, like Vitality, they still have some things to figure out here, and you assume that they have the momentum of that 3-0 going in their favor. I can't remember who put out the stat, but somebody had told me that only one team, and now it's 2, had won a major after going 3-0 in the Swiss, which I thought was interesting. And the last thing I want to talk about here is mentality, and that's something that affected both of these teams that we're watching on the pitch here. With Furia, they had it, right? They beat Twisted Minds here. They're running through. Oh man, look at Lost. He's playing so well, and Lost was playing so well over the course of this tournament. We saw him with that huge dunk just a second ago here. We didn't talk about it, but that fake there, oh my goodness, great timing. In this series, he was huge. Over the course of the Swiss, he was impactful. I thought he was their best player and probably a top 5 player from this event in my eyes. But, they have this mentality of like, we have been here before, and all of my questions leading up to this event for Furia, none of them were about whether or not they could make it through Swiss, what their quality would be in Swiss, although it did ebb and flow a little bit based on who their opponent was. Really, the question was for Yan and I guess by extension Drufinho, because he struggled with this as well, and this is nitpicking because they made a top 4, but it's like, can they be consistently good enough to win on a championship Sunday? And they were showing great form, especially with that Vitality series. And you want to talk about, maybe that's a little bit of momentum, even though they were both those teams were a touch turbulent, but I'm getting off track here yet again. The thing about mentality is coming into a series like that, like they had beat Vitality a bunch last season, even though Zen's the only returning player, but they get into this series against Karmine Corp, and so much credit to Karmine where it's due. We talked about them forever, but it almost seemed like Furia already thought they weren't going to win that game just with how they came out super flat, couldn't get anything going offensively. They were throwing the ball away. Yan and Drufinho, even when they had good opportunities to shoot the ball, they still struggled to put those on target, hit them with power. And I think it's just a mentality thing where they get up into that top four and they're like, maybe this really is our ceiling, especially a player like Yan, who is, if they're gonna win, he has to be their best player. He of course goes 7 in the 1v1 against Moxie, loses that. I'm not saying that had an impact on his 3v3, but it's like that mental piece of it. I mean, Dignitas, another team, I had them slated as a top 8. They look really good, and then Jorius just completely falls off a cliff, and nobody's really there to pick him up, which I think is something I've always thought that Jack's leadership was incredible. But Jorius was having just a terrible day 2 there, and nobody was there to kind of get him out of it. But Jorius couldn't get himself out of it either, first and foremost. And that mentality for the player who I thought Jorius was their best player on day 1 ends up looking terrible on day 2. Whether or not the form is something that Jorius obviously has. You don't completely lose your form over the course of one day, but the mental block and not being able to get over that, I felt like was something that sunk Dignitas. Ultimates getting past Falcons is a huge mental boost that takes them all the way to the grand finals. They ride that. Chiefs, losing to Luminosity. Luminosity in foot looking so good, where like once you are kind of like, back against the wall, let's just kind of go out here and play, especially for a team like Luminosity where the expectations are so low. I just felt like those were a lot of scattered thoughts about big things that were important to me. So mentality, momentum, the importance of identity for a team. Great shot there by Atomic. And of course, Karmine Corp looking so good. Guys, I'm excited. I have a lot of content that I want to do post major here. And now that we have beaten the plague that we were a part of, we are back on track here. I got a lot of great guests lined up who will be coming on the Need Boost podcast. Of course, the Shift Cast will be back in form as well. And this YouTube channel, you should expect to see some other cool little games that we have. We, of course, always do our post-major randomizer where all of the 48 players are put into 16 brand new teams, and we run them through the hypothetical of who would win. And a lot of other fun stuff like that, breaking down some of the teams and players and statistics from this event. So if you are not subscribed already, please do, because then you might get to see that content, and it'll be more in your face than it would be otherwise. Aquadome is going to be rounding out here. Lost and LJ, shout out. Huge events from them amongst mini and ultimates. Sorry that I ever doubted you guys. You were way better than I thought you would be. Guys, as always, thank you so much for taking time out of your day. And until next time, take it easy.